Um, Now, having said that, I can be objective. If you're a Killswitch Engage fan, this is exactly what you would expect from them. The musically, it's very good. In fact, if this were an instrumental, or if this were done with clean vocals, I would buy this all day long. Um, but it's not, and it's, as you said, it's not my cup of tea, and that's fine, and that's what makes the metal world go round. So it is what it is. If you're a fan of I consider this to be a new metal sound. If you can deal with the screaming vocals, the barking vocals, the growling, or if you're a fan of that, this is going to be right up your alley. Now, it's not up my alley, but having said that, I'm still going to give this a solid 3.5 out of 5.
Wow. Well, I don't call it new metal. It's more, I guess you would call it metalcore or whatever you want to call what that genre is nowadays. But, okay, so like on certain tracks, Biv, like Cut Me Loose. Third track starts out, kind of subdued, starts out with pretty much clean vocals in the verses and even in the chorus. Did that do anything for you at all? I mean, is it, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not as if the entire album is, I mean, there's, Jesse can sing, actually.
No,
I mean, he actually
that's
has good,
exactly,
clean vocals.
That to me is what showed so much promise, and then it would get ruined because you'd have I know ruined is by my definition, but to me, when you have that ability to sing like that, when you have that ability to really bring the music together to a crescendo, and instead you barf on the microphone, it just ruins it for me. But that's just me. But like I said, having said that, and taking that into account, that I'm not a fan, and still listening to it based on the merits of the music, I still give it a solid 3.5.
Well, that's way better than I would have expected, considering you gave Circus Maximus 2 out of 5. Wow. 3.5 out of 5 for Killswitch Engage. I'm going to actually give it 3.75 out of 5. Actually, yeah, I'll stay with that. A little bit closer to 4 maybe for me if I was trying to not be such a fanboy, but I'm going to try to be objective. But again, it is what you expect from a Killswitch Engage album, at least in my opinion. You're not going to hear it and go, okay, what the hell are these guys doing? Right in the pocket, good what you like. And, Jesse was on the last album back with the band, really was clearly music that was written for Howard. This is Jesse back in the band, fully entrenched, fully contributing, and just sounds really, really good. Solid album. Like, if you're a Killswitch Engage fan, you're not going to go wrong with it. If you're not, if you like the genre, you're still going to dig it. If you're Biv, you're not going to, but that's okay. I think, Biv was still pretty fair with what he offered there. And, again, album to definitely check out. And, that's Killswitch Engage for you. If that track sounds familiar, it should sound familiar if you're an According to Metalhead, because on the second episode, we were joined by Marcus Myhill from Dante, and we played actually that track, Beautiful Again, off of the album When We Were Beautiful, and we talked a couple episodes ago about, hey man, March 18th, the new album's coming out, and here we are, being able to talk about Dante's new album. Now, Dante is a band that Biv got me into. Biv's been a fan for quite some time. Big fan of Saturnine, which was the album, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Biv, was the first album that you made me go, oh, dude, you need to check these guys out. Am I right?
Oh, that was the one that it put them on the map for me.
And then, so I got a chance to go back and listen to Saturnine, really good stuff, and was really interested to hear what this album was. And of course, when we had Marcus on the show, other than Beautiful Again, there was really no other song that we could really reference, and now we have the ability of having the whole album in front of us. And I got to tell you, Biv, I'm really, really impressed with this album, and I know that you wanted to get my thoughts and opinions on it, which I'll share here in a second. But since I talked a lot of Killswitch on the last review, what are your thoughts on this album? And as a Dante fan, did it do something for you? Did they hit a home run? Did they miss? What do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, my expectations were very high for this CD because it is Dante, and everything they've done has been top quality musicianship, and they didn't disappoint at all. In fact, the very first track, which is about 11 minutes long, Rearrangement of the Gods, man, you want to talk about just a almost an electronic tribal beat with a awesome guitar riff, some nice overlaid keys. It's got a melodic chorus. And even though it's 11 minutes long, it's accessible. We talked about this before where sometimes, songs can be so long or so complex that, we talked about this with Myrith, that just, Lance King talked about it on the very first episode where sometimes things have to grow on you. Well, in this case, Rearrangement of the Gods, it just absolutely pulled me in.
Yeah, Biv, you're exactly right. And, again, you're going to get tired of hearing me saying about, first track of the album, the opener. You couldn't have chosen a better track to lead the album off.
I agree. And, behind that is a 9-minute track, Ambitious. It's got a great opening riff. Now, this one is a little bit more complex, and this one might take a few listens to grasp. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it's got more layers to it. You're not going to catch everything. It's like a great movie. You're laughing so hard the first time through that you have to watch it again. Well, it's the same thing here. There's so much great musicianship going on that you're not going to be able to catch it the first couple times through. My one criticism on this track and probably on this album, at times the vocals are a bit overreaching, and that was if it was obvious on any one track to me, it was on Ambitious. Of course, Beautiful Again, we already know about that one. I could go on and on. Until the Light Breaks In, Let Me Down. I mean, they're all great tracks. This is a CD, even though these tracks are accessible for the most part as standalone tracks. I definitely think there's something to be gained by listening to this all the way through together in succession. It's just one of those CDs that I think the more you listen to it, the more it's going to grow on you, and the more it grows on you, the more you're going to listen to it. I'm going to give this a 4.25 out of 5, and I think it's actually going to go up as time goes on.
It very well could. I have it rated as a 4 out of 5 album for me as well, and I don't want to piggyback on some of the things that you mentioned. Rearrangement of the Gods, my favorite song on the album, great track, and let me comment on the vocals, because a lot of times we don't talk to each other prior to doing a review on the show because we really want to truly get our true reaction and hear it for the first time, like the listeners are going to hear it. Even as friends, we, at least in my opinion, because we haven't even had this conversation, we're going to have it now. The only criticism I have of the band, first of all, Marcus on the keys, rock star, really good stuff. It's not overdone, adds a lot to it. Great guitar work, great. I mean, everything musically, really, really solid. I will criticize the vocals a little bit, more of the low registry stuff. If your mid-range and even your highs, he's good. Very, very good. Your lower stuff, a lot of the verse work that he'll do. And I notice a kind of a pattern with Dante is there's like a, there's 4 bars, which are kind of lower registry, then 4 bars, which are kind of like mid level vocals, if you will, mid-range vocals, and then you'll kind of go into more of the bridge and the chorus, which are usually either kind of sing-along or more, higher, range vocals, and those will work fine. The lower stuff for me, that's, maybe I'm being nitpicky, but I don't think it's nitpicky. To me, that's the thing where I go, yeah, okay. And that's the only reason why I can't say that this album is a 5 out of 5 for me. Because musically, similar to our Redemption score, in which Redemption, musically, 5 out of 5. Vocally, not so much. In this instance, I kind of look at it the same way, in which, musically, the best I've heard Dante do. And if you're looking for a progressive, if you want to hear the definition of what progressive metal is, put Rearrangement of the Gods on. There's so many tempo changes throughout the song. You understand what progressive metal is all about from that track alone. If you really want an example of what progressive heavy metal is all about, vocally leaves a little bit to be desired for me, which is why I'll still give this album a 4 out of 5, but it potentially could almost get a perfect score without that blemish. Slight, maybe, but it's a blemish nonetheless.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on Rearrangement of the Gods. Now, I want to clarify, because it's, to your point, if you were to introduce someone to progressive metal and put on, this track, what's interesting about the track is, while I agree it does have a lot of tempo changes and things like that, it's not inaccessible. It's still listenable. It's still it's just not. It doesn't overdo it, and that's the problem with a lot of progressive metal bands, is they think that they have to do like 82 signature changes in 3 minutes, and you don't. You really don't. So it's a really, really good CD. It's one that'll be in my rotation. And I totally agree with you, Marcus, on keys, rock star, all the way, just a rock star.
Good stuff. And what's funny is, you look at bands like Dante, and the reason we had Marcus on the show is because obviously Biv's a big fan of the band, but these are bands that are not household names. These are bands that, most people don't even know they have stuff out there. And do not make the mistake of not checking out bands like Dante, especially if you're a progressive metal fan. You will not be disappointed in it. Solid album, solid performance, and I can't wait to hear what their next stuff is, because they're definitely going in the right direction and making really, really good stuff that's heavy, but progressive, but lots of melody, and just a really, really solid album from Dante. Make sure you check it out.
Just don't know what it means to be human. You don't know how it feels to question all that is real. Am I machine or am I flesh and blood?
If you heard a couple episodes ago where you'll hear a certain guitar riff and you go, that's Scott Ian. Just like that, you hear 30 seconds of that, and you go, that's Blaze Bayley. And that's exactly who it is. That's Blaze Bayley off of his newest album that just came out, Infinite Entanglement. That's Human. Really good track. One of Biv's favorite tracks on the albums. He keeps talking about how much he loves that song. I do too. Really good album. I will say this, though, really quick before we go into this, Biv. If you've got a chance to see the Human video online, which I did watch, time has not been very good to Blaze Bayley. And what I mean by that is vocally, he still sounds as good now as he did ever. But physically, he looks like a retired woodshop teacher. Have you seen this guy? Did you see the video for Human?
He does. Now, I think a lot of that is, life on the road, isn't kind to some people. And if you're not very, very careful, James LaBrie of Dream Theater went through this for a while, where he put on some weight and took it off and put it on and took it off. And it can be very physically taxing. So that's just something that everyone has to deal with in their own way.
And what's funny about it is I'm like, oh my God, that's Blaze Bayley. Holy shit. And then I went, I mean, he was just in Maiden, and then I went, oh, that was 20 years ago. Never mind. Which is crazy to think about it. I mean, and a lot of people, of course, know the name Blaze Bayley. They think of, okay, oh yeah, wasn't he the guy who took over for Bruce? And